You buy the expensive loaf, the one that looks rustic and beautiful. You choose whole wheat. You check the ingredients. So why do you still feel bloated, tired, and foggy after you eat it? It's a frustration millions of us feel every single day. We're told to eat more whole grains, to pick the crusty loaf over the plastic-wrapped poison. We spend more money thinking we're making a healthier choice. And yet, for so many, the discomfort, the brain fog, the energy crash, it continues. What if I told you that a medieval peasant with zero modern nutritional science had a secret to bread that was more nutritious and easier to digest than almost anything you can buy in a store today? They didn't have commercial yeast. They had something far more powerful, and that ancient secret is precisely what we've lost. This isn't just about bread. It's a story about how the relentless obsession with speed and profit has stripped the soul and the science from our most basic food. The answer to our modern bread problem isn't in a new fad diet or the gluten-free aisle. It's buried in the past, waiting for us to reclaim it. The modern problem, let's be honest, for many of us, bread has become the enemy. It's supposed to be comfort food, the foundation of a meal, but it's also a source of anxiety. You eat a sandwich for lunch, and by 3 p.m., that familiar fog rolls in. The bloating starts, a feeling of heaviness that kills your energy and your focus. We blame the gluten, we blame the carbs, we blame ourselves for having no willpower. This experience is so common, we think it's normal. An entire industry has been built on selling us solutions, gluten-free products, packed with weird starches and gums, or keto diets that cut out bread entirely. We're caught in a war of conflicting advice. One expert says embrace whole grains for fiber. Another warns you about inflammatory proteins and anti-nutrients. The artisan bread movement was supposed to fix this. A return to tradition, a rejection of the industrial loaf. We see the words stone ground, whole grain, naturally leavened. We pay $6, $7, even $8 for a loaf, believing we're buying a piece of that wholesome past. And look, those loaves are often better. Fewer preservatives, better ingredients, more flavor. But for many, the core problem, that feeling of digestive war, remains. This is the paradox of the healthy modern loaf. We're following the rules. We're buying the good bread, but our bodies are screaming that something is fundamentally wrong. The question is, what? What are we still missing? To find the answer, we have to look past the marketing and go back to a time when bread wasn't a product. It was the staff of life. We have to understand what a medieval peasant knew, not from a lab, but from the brutal intuition of daily survival, the lost wisdom of the past. When we think of a medieval peasant, we picture a life that was nasty, brutish, and short. And in many ways, it was. Famine, plague, and backbreaking work were constants. Let's be clear, this is not about romanticizing poverty. Historical records show they had high rates of malnutrition, parasites, and all kinds of health issues we can't even imagine. Their medicine was a mess of superstition and herbal remedies. So why should we look to them for wisdom? It is precisely because their lives were so hard that we must pay attention to the food that fueled them. For a peasant in medieval Europe, bread wasn't a side dish. It was the meal. It made up 70% or more of their daily calories. They were eating 2 to 3 pounds of it a day. That was the fuel they used to plant fields, build cathedrals, and survive winters. And here's the critical point. Their bread had to work. It had to be digestible. It had to provide real, sustained energy. If their primary food source caused the bloating, brain fog, and energy crashes we experience today, they would have simply starved. Their survival depended on a bread that sustained them, not one that slowed them down. They didn't have our shiny kitchens or our little packets of commercial yeast. They had stone mills, wooden troughs, and a secret ingredient that was alive, passed down from mother to daughter for generations, a sourdough starter, a leaven. This lost wisdom wasn't some aha moment. It was an evolved, symbiotic relationship with the microscopic world, born from pure necessity. This process, a slow, deliberate transformation of grain, water, and salt, is what made their simple loaf a nutritional powerhouse. It was built on three pillars that we have systematically destroyed in the modern era: the grain itself, the way it was milled, and most importantly, the transformative power of time and fermentation. This is the wisdom we've forgotten. The first pillar, the grain. The story of our bread begins with the seed, but the wheat we eat today is a genetic shadow of what our ancestors ate. It's a Frankenstein grain. They didn't grow the short, high-yield dwarf wheat that covers our planet today. They grew ancient or heritage grains: einkorn, emmer, spelt, and thousands of local land races of wheat, rye, and barley. These grains were genetically diverse, a resilient ecosystem in the field that could survive pests and drought. Let's look at einkorn, the world's most primitive wheat. Genetically, it's simple. It has 14 chromosomes. Modern bread wheat, it has 42 chromosomes. It's a complex hybrid that has been genetically manipulated so many times it's barely recognizable as the same plant. This isn't just a fun fact for botanists. It has massive implications for the proteins in the grain, specifically gluten. The gluten in ancient wheat is structured differently. Some lab studies suggest that einkorn digestion produces far fewer of the toxic peptides linked to celiac disease. This does not mean it's safe for celiacs, but it points to a fundamental molecular difference. The gluten is weaker, more fragile. It's a different beast entirely. In fact, modern wheat is the result of a hybridization that introduced the D genome of gluten, which is the source of many proteins linked to wheat intolerance. Ancient einkorn doesn't even have this D genome. Now contrast that with the wheat in your bread. Starting with the Green Revolution, wheat wasn't bred for nutrition. It was bred for yield. It was engineered to be short so it wouldn't blow over, and to have a tough, elastic gluten structure that could withstand the violent, high-speed mixers of industrial factories. The goal was to feed the world, a noble goal, but it had an unintended consequence. We created a system that prioritizes volume over vitality. It's not just about the quantity of gluten. It's about the quality and its immunoreactive properties. We selected for a super gluten that's perfect for machines, but terrible for the human gut. We traded genetic diversity for a global monoculture. We lost thousands of unique wheat varieties, and with them, we lost unique flavors and nutritional profiles. Ancient grains consistently show higher levels of antioxidants, minerals, and other beneficial compounds. The peasant started with a diverse, genetically simpler grain. The modern baker, even the artisan one, almost always starts with a flour made from a grain optimized for the factory, not the human body. That's the first pillar we kicked out from under our bread. The second pillar, the milling. Once harvested, the grain had to become flour. And here we find the second pillar we destroyed, the milling. The difference between how a peasant made flour and how we do it today is the difference between eating a whole apple and eating a spoonful of sugar. For the peasant, grain was taken to a local stone mill. Two massive stones would slowly grind the entire wheat kernel, the bran, the germ, and the endosperm into one single flour. It was a slow, low-temperature process. Let's be clear about what was in that flour. The bran, fiber, B vitamins, minerals. The endosperm, the starchy part for energy. The germ, the embryo of the plant, a nutritional powerhouse of healthy fats, vitamin E, and magnesium. Stone grinding crushes all three parts together into a living, nutrient-dense flour. It had a shorter shelf life because the oils in the germ could go rancid. But that wasn't a problem because it was milled locally and used fresh. Now, let's turn to the modern era and the invention that ruined everything, the roller mill. Instead of crushing, high-speed steel rollers shear the grain open and strip it apart. The endosperm is scraped away and ground into the fluffy white flour we know. The bran and the germ, they're sifted out and discarded. Why? Money. First, The resulting white flour is shelf-stable for years, great for a global food system. Second, it produced the light, airy white breads that became a status symbol. But this efficiency came at an insane nutritional cost. They stripped away the fiber, the healthy fats, the vitamins, the minerals, everything good. They left you with pure starch. Then comes the insult. To compensate for this nutritional devastation, they enrich it by adding back a few synthetic vitamins and minerals. They remove 20 plus nutrients, add back 4 or 5 synthetic ones, and then have the nerve to call it fortified. It's like stealing your wallet, giving you back a few coins, and calling it a gift. Even the whole wheat bread in the supermarket is a lie. It's often just industrial white flour with some of the bran and germ mixed back in. It's a reassembled product, not a true, integrated whole. The peasant's flour was a complete food. Our modern flour is an industrial product, engineered for shelf life at the expense of your health. The third pillar, the fermentation. This is the heart of the matter. This is the alchemical secret that turned peasant bread into a superfood. The missing ingredient in almost all modern bread is time. The medieval baker didn't have packets of instant yeast. For thousands of years, bread was leavened with a sourdough starter, a living symbiotic colony of wild yeasts and beneficial lactic acid bacteria captured from the air in the grain itself. When this starter was mixed into the stone ground flour, it kicked off a long, slow fermentation, often 12, 24, or even 36 hours. A modern factory loaf is proofed in under 2 hours. During that long, slow peasant fermentation, magic happens. First, it neutralizes anti-nutrients. Whole grains contain phytic acid, a compound that binds to minerals like iron, zinc, and magnesium, and prevents your body from absorbing them. But the bacteria in a sourdough starter produce an enzyme, phytase, that breaks down the phytic acid. A proper sourdough fermentation can reduce phytic acid by up to 90%. It unlocks the minerals in the grain and makes them available to your body. Fast, yeast-leavened bread doesn't have time for this. Second, it pre-digests the bread. The long fermentation breaks down the complex starches and proteins, including gluten. While it doesn't make it gluten-free, it degrades the gluten proteins, making them far easier for our bodies to handle. The microbes do the digestive work for you before it even hits the oven. This is why many people who can't tolerate modern bread can eat real sourdough without a problem. It's not just the gluten, it's the lack of fermentation. Third, it creates new nutrients and flavor. The bacteria produce B vitamins and the complex tangy flavors we associate with real bread, which also act as natural preservatives. The peasant's bread was a living food, transformed by time and microbiology. The modern fall from grace. Now, contrast that with today. The story of modern bread is the story of a relentless war on time. The real fall from grace came in 1961 with the Chorleywood bread process, CBP. This industrial method makes about 80% of the bread in the UK and is used worldwide. Its goal is to get flour from silo to sliced packaged loaf in under 4 hours. It uses intense, high-speed mixing, a huge dose of commercial yeast, and a cocktail of chemical improvers. The gentle, patient fermentation is replaced by a few minutes of violent mechanical energy. In a Chorleywood loaf, there is zero time for phytic acid to break down. The minerals remain locked away. There is zero time for the pre-digestion of gluten. The tough proteins hit your gut at full strength, which researchers believe is a major driver of the explosion in wheat sensitivities and IBS. One study found that bread made with this no-time process was significantly more likely to trigger IBS symptoms. There is zero time for flavor to develop, which is why they have to add sugar to make it taste like anything. But what about that beautiful artisan loaf? Surely that's different. And yes, it often is. But sourdough has become a meaningless marketing term. Many bakeries create a sour faux loaf. They use a tiny bit of starter for flavor, but do the heavy lifting with commercial yeast to keep production fast. Others just add acidifiers to mimic the taste. If your sourdough is light, fluffy, and tastes vaguely like vinegar, you've been duped. It didn't undergo the long fermentation that delivers the health benefits. This is the great divergence. Peasant bread was a product of transformation. Modern bread is a product of assembly. We traded the ancient wisdom of patience for the modern convenience of speed, and our collective gut health is paying the price. The great sourdough debate: is it really that simple? So, the story seems clean. Ancient, slow bread is good. Modern, fast bread is bad. For many people who make the switch to real sourdough and find relief, the story ends there. But in nutrition science, it's rarely that simple. Recently, scientists put this exact idea to the test, and the results were surprising. Several studies have compared true sourdough bread to standard industrial bread and found no significant difference in things like blood sugar response, gut microbiome changes, or inflammation for the average person. So what the hell is going on? Does this invalidate everything? Does it mean the peasant's bread was no better after all? Not at all. It just adds a crucial layer of nuance. The answer isn't just sourdough. The answer is, it depends. It depends on you. First, individuality. Each of us has a gut microbiome as unique as a fingerprint. How you respond to a food depends on the army of microbes living in your gut. For someone whose gut is already well equipped to handle wheat, the difference might be minimal. For someone else, the predigestion from sourdough could be the difference between comfort and misery. The best bread is not universal. It's personal. Second, a study is only as good as its design. Many of these studies don't compare a true peasant-style loaf made from stone-ground ancient grains against a hyper-industrialized Chorley wood loaf. The synergistic effect of all three pillars, grain, mill, and fermentation, is where the real magic is. And that's something most studies aren't set up to measure. So we can't dismiss the lived experience of millions or the fundamental biochemistry. The science tells us that while sourdough isn't a magic bullet for everyone, it represents a powerful step in the right direction. The long fermentation does reduce phytic acid. It does break down gluten. It does lower the glycemic response. And for people with IBS, the evidence is strong that long fermented bread is far better. The takeaway isn't that the peasant's wisdom was wrong. It's that the problem is even more complex. It's not just about swapping one loaf for another. It's about rethinking our entire philosophy of food, the so what, and how to reclaim your daily bread. We've seen the three pillars that made the peasant's loaf a nutritional powerhouse: ancient grain, whole milling, and slow fermentation. We've seen how the modern food system, in its quest for profit, destroyed every single one. We've also seen that the science is nuanced and the answer is personal. So where does that leave you? How do you eat real bread in the 21st century? The path forward isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about applying the principles of that lost wisdom. Here's the actionable advice. Here's the so what. First, become a label detective. When you buy bread, especially sourdough, look for the signs. The ingredients should be flour, water, salt. That's it. If you see yeast, it's a hybrid loaf at best. Ask the baker. How long do you ferment your dough? A real baker will be proud to tell you about their 12, 18, or 24-hour process. Real bread is heavy, with a dark, blistered crust and an irregular crumb. It goes stale in 2 to 3 days. That's not a bug. That's a feature. It means it's real. Second, consider the flour. This is the next level. Look for breads made with stone-ground flour, or better yet, heritage grains like spelt, einkorn, or rye. The demand is growing, and they're showing up at more bakeries and farmers markets. They taste better and have a completely different nutritional profile. Third, and this is the most powerful step, make your own. I know what you're thinking. I don't have time. Medieval peasants worked 12-hour days in fields and still baked their own bread. You can handle it. Most of bread making is just waiting. The total active work is about 15 minutes. Nurturing a starter is like having a tiny, quiet pet that gives you delicious, digestible bread in return. The internet is full of guides. The experience will fundamentally change how you see your food. The peasant's bread teaches us a timeless lesson. Food is not just fuel. It's a relationship based on patience and respect. We have broken that relationship. We demand our food be instant, cheap, and convenient, and we're paying the price with our health. Reclaiming the wisdom of the peasant loaf is about reintroducing the missing ingredient of time back into our food. It's about giving our bodies the deeply nourishing, truly digestible daily bread they have been starving for all along. If this journey into the history and science of our most basic food resonated with you, subscribe for more deep dives into the lost wisdom of our ancestors. I want to hear your story in the comments. Have you made the switch to real sourdough? Have you tried baking your own? Share your experience, because we can learn from each other and rediscover a better way to eat, one loaf at a time.